Representative Mitchell, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
I was hoping to talk to you about your experience fostering children. Last year you spoke vocally about your experience. What can you tell me about the benefits of fostering children, and what has that been like for your family?
Well, I think that we started getting into foster care early on in our marriage, and it is, in our opinion, it was a blessing to be able to help these children out. And I think that that's where most of it came from, was from the heart. Had several kids through our home that really touched our lives. I shared a story last year on the House floor, and I am fine sharing that again this year, because we passed a bill for the foster system, and I was a big supporter of that bill. Basically, that bill allowed for children that aged out of the system, if they weren't ready to take on the world, then they had the opportunity to stay until they were 21. And we had an instance of two young ladies, the young lady that was in my home, and then her sister. And as soon as they aged out, her sister, who was in our home, or the young lady in our home, actually called us back and says, "Mom, Dad, I want to come home." And so we did. We brought her home, got her back into school, got her head in the right direction, and she's doing great. She's serving in the military, getting ready to go overseas again for the second time. And then on the flip side, her sister that aged out and didn't have that to latch onto, ended up in a totally different path down in Las Vegas, and it was just it was sad to see, but it was good to see that our daughter came out and did that.
On Monday, the director of the Department of Health and Welfare went before JFAC, and he is requesting 21 new social workers, as well as the ability to pay those folks overtime rather than giving them comp time. Do you support that? What do you see as the value of that?
So it's kind of interesting, because we watch where our tax dollars are going and where it's being spent. And I think that having more social workers out there is a good thing, because it gives the families that do take on these children, gives them a support that they can go to, a way to, someone to turn to when they have questions and need answers. I think that it's important that we have the right amount out there to help out the children, because we've got a lot of children out on the streets that need a good home to go to.
So you're not on JFAC, but outside of just state funding, what do you see as ways the state could improve the foster system through policy?
So I think that one of the biggest things we can do is really, I guess, advertising the importance of it. The importance of taking care of these children that don't have a good home to be in, that don't have a good situation. I think that that's one of the biggest things we can do, is just get out there and make the public aware of it, and then seek out and find those parents that really do want to do it for the kids. It's in our home, it was more about the kids than it was about any kind of funding that we may have had, and I think that that's important. Obviously, there are costs involved. We had a lot of costs involved with all the kids that came through our home, and as a therapeutic home, we had even more costs, and they took care of us on some of the costs there. But I think the biggest thing is just making sure that the parents are in it for the right reason and taking care of the kids. And I think getting the word out is going to be the big thing.
Parents who are in it for the right reason, that rings a bell. Director Jepson is also asking the state to increase the compensation for foster parents. The state of Idaho does have one of the lower rates for compensation of Idaho. I know you've expressly said that you and your wife were never in it for the money. Do you have concerns with raising the rate for foster parents, or?
I think the only concern that I would have is how high we raise it. I don't want to see it get to a point where people are doing it just for the money. Just to give an example, when we were doing foster parenting in Oregon, there was a lot of families down in Oregon that were doing it just for the money, and they'd take on 5 or 6 kids that they couldn't handle, but it was all for the money. And so it was more of it was taking on kids, and they weren't able to give the love that was needed. And I say that, we had an experience with a couple of kids that were brought into our home, and they were abused at a very young age. And the young boy, about 4 years old, was not able to talk. He was still in diapers, just laid on the floor. And the caseworker told us that's what he's going to do. And a week later, she called us and said, "How are they doing?" And I said, "Oh, they're doing great. Hunter's out playing with our son." And she came over immediately and sat on our couch crying because he was out playing. And she said, "What have you done?" I said, "You just love him. He just needs to know that he's taken care of and safe." And that was the biggest key. And so I guess if I were to say something about that, I think that that's what I would look for in foster parents, is someone who's going to care for the child. And so the funding, I'm all for. We need to help them out with some funds. I just don't want it to get to a point where it's for the money instead of for the kids.
You have worked with children who've come from troubled homes. What would you say is the consequence of living in a state that has a shortage of social workers, that has a shortage of loving foster homes? What should people understand about that?
I think my biggest worry with that is that these children eventually grow up, and if they don't have the right kind of a stable environment to grow up in, then they become a burden on the state through having to spend our tax dollars on the welfare program. Some of them end up going down the wrong path and get into crime and stuff. And so I think the important part to remember is that we need people that will take care of them. And if we don't have enough people that actually care about the children, that you'll have too many of those kids that are lost, that we lose. And nobody should ever get lost.
Out of curiosity, what is your most joyful memory fostering children?
Most joyful memory, well, I think my most joyful memory, and it's not really in fostering at the time, but the young lady that was living with us that's now in the military, she's gave us a grandchild, and she's just as much our grandchild as any of our other ones. And we communicate with her all the time and have good conversations and go out and visit her every now and then, and she comes out to visit us, and it's an awesome experience.
That's great to hear. Well, we'll see what the legislature does moving forward.
Right.
But until then, I appreciate your time, Representative Mitchell. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.